Alright guys, and now we're back with another tabletop tournament breakdown. So this last week I actually played in the Lore Master of Sotek's tabletop tournament once again, and man, I have to say I've been having a lot of fun with these tournaments. So for anyone who isn't familiar with the format before we move forward, it's pretty much, as the name would infer, very similar to Warhammer 40k, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, or Age of Sigmar. So if you're going into a Warhammer 40k tournament, you build your list, you kind of think about the metagame, what's going to be popular? Is it going to be Imperial Knights? You think you're going to be seeing a lot of Space Marines? Is there going to be a lot of Horde armies, Orcs, and Tyranids? Do I need to bring a lot of Flamethrower type units? And this is pretty much the same. You get one list, you go into the tournament, and you do not get to change your list. So you're not going to know what your opponent's playing. So Lore Master of Sotek actually randomly rolls your opponents. He puts you up, and you're going to see your opponent for the first time, as well as his army pick, right when you get into the game. So it's definitely, it's very, very interesting. And you have to put a lot of thought into your army. Whereas in Quick Battle, you can go in, you can see what your opponent's playing. You build your army to, counter that army or to face off against it. But in this, you kind of have to give a little bit of respect to every army. So for example, look at this list. You just got to think, can I beat the Skaven? Can I beat the Greenskins? Am I going to be able to deal with the heavy construct of the Tomb Kings? Am I going to be able to deal with, Empire Heavy Cav? You have to be pretty well-rounded, which I really like. It kind of adds another layer of tactical complexity to the game, which I think is very, very fun. So as far as the format goes, like I said, we're going to be playing the Dwarves, and this is my list, the list you see in front of you. And before we move forward, also, guys, if you're looking to see all of the different tabletop tournaments, I believe this is number 6 or 7. They're all uploaded on the Lore Master of Sotek's channel, so please make sure to head on over there, subscribe, and also check out all of his videos, because there's definitely quite a few tabletop tournaments and some really, really cool tactics. Anyways, long overdue, here's my list. So in the front line, we're going to be using Dwarf Warriors. So just the standard Dwarf Warriors with the axes and the shields. And they do the trick, honestly. They're going to be able to beat most, or at least hold back most infantry. Obviously, they will get taken out by heavy great weapon infantry. But I'm hoping that the 4 Dwarf Warriors with the support of the double rune magic plus Thunder or Overwatch Fire will be able to deal with most threats in the front line. So on top of that, we do have 4 groups of miners. The miners are going to be there to provide a little bit of extra armor piercing. But more importantly, miners are what I like to call a battlefield control unit. You can vanguard and get a little bit cheeky if you want, and just try and sneak up on your opponent's artillery or missiles, which is always hilarious if you can pull it off. But what you actually do with miners is you put them in the middle of your formations on the flanks. You use them to kind of take charges. Once your front line of Dwarf Warriors falters, you send them in. And if they don't take like a huge charge or initial beating, miners can actually last quite some time. And that's one of the big strengths of the Dwarfs in general, is that even their lower tier troops like Dwarf Warriors and miners have 80 armor, 85 on Dwarf Warriors. They both have pretty good leadership for their cost and decent defensive stats. Obviously, the miners don't really have much in the way of defense, but yeah, I mean, the armor and the leadership is really solid. They're going to hold, which is then very complementary to the Thunders, which are going to be doing most of the heavy lifting. So as far as the metagame of this tabletop tournament series has been going, that Sotek has been doing, it seems that constructs and heavy armor seem to be winning every tournament. Last week, I think we had dinosaurs win with like Croxagors. The week before that, there was 4 White Lions and like 4 Dragon Princes. And it just seems to, I mean, in the first tournament I played in with Vampire Coast, I'm trying to think, was there a lot of armor? But yeah, I had like deck droppers and Noctiluls and stuff. But anyways, armor has just been super powerful, right? Because if you don't prepare for armor, you're going to struggle a lot against it. And that's kind of one of the things that makes Dwarves pretty strong in an all-comers tournament. Because normally if you know you're playing Dwarves, you can counter them pretty easily by just spamming great weapons and armor piercing. But if you don't know they're coming, I feel like they can have a pretty good match, pretty good run. So we got Dwarf Warriors, we got 2 groups of Longbeards, which are a great unit. They're not going to beat things like Great Swords and Black Orcs, but they have charge defense against large foes, so they can be used against heavy cav and monsters to mitigate the charges. They have good armor piercing, incredible leadership, and are just a very good anchor, because we're not looking for our infantry to win these fights. We're looking for our Thunders to tear things apart while being protected by the Dragonback Slayers and the Giant Slayers. So as far as our Lords, we got a Rune Lord and Runesmith. As much as I do get bored of playing with these guys, if you're going to be playing against competent, like tournament level players, you pretty much have to. And in this tournament, we have folks like Falcon, we have Rigson. I mean, there's a bunch of, solid tournament players that are going to be playing in this. So I had to go with a more competitive build. But last but not least, we do also have a cannon in the back, which is going to be dropping some heat. And Dwarves, of course, don't really like repositioning once you get that just kind of sexy geometry, right? So you're going to be wanting to kind of stay where you are. So the cannon is basically just to bring my opponents in and also give me good fire against some big targets. So that's it for my list, guys. So without further ado, we're going to be jumping into the first game. And remember, if I do lose the first match, we're going to be following the individual who beat me all the way to the end. So thanks again for joining, guys, and we will see you in the first game. All right, guys, and now we're here with game 1 in this tabletop tournament featuring a showdown between my Dwarves and the Dinosaurs of Felcon. So definitely a very tough opponent to pull here in the first match. If memory serves, I'm pretty sure he's won the past couple weeks. I think he won the week before this one using the Dinosaurs, and before that he also won with the High Elves, which is definitely quite impressive, using Dragon Princes and White Lions as the primary core of his army. So you guys already saw my force in the previous screen, so we're just going to be taking a look at Falcon's army here. In the front line, he does have a very heavy core of skink cohorts with javelins who are going to be mixed in with standard skink cohorts. So these guys, if you're going to be using Kroxigors, definitely have a very nice synergy. It's basically just the, I wouldn't say like tank and spank, but I would say get spanked and then the heavier spanking, or I don't know, it's kind of like a reverse thing. But anyways, the skinks, pretty big HP pool, high model count. But on top of that, skinks also do have very good maneuverability. So if they want to be getting up and around the back, getting onto the guns, just causing general disruption, definitely pretty solid. And the javelins are going to be pretty useful against things like slayers. Slayers, of course, have they have some missile mitigation and they have the equivalent of bronze shields. But yeah, definitely like this combination. The Kroxigor and the skink, I think in lore they actually work together as well. You can see a couple of those cannonballs actually going like right between those Kroxigors, giving them a scale cut there. But yeah, it's kind of an age-old composition, right? You have the skinks in the front line, the Kroxigors come in with their paddles, do some heavy damage, and it works pretty damn well. This has been something that we have seen quite a bit in this tabletop tournament, seeing the Kroxigor supported by the skinks. Now, you can do this with Saurus, and, it worked relatively well, right? You have a high DPS unit in the Saurus with high leadership, who are going to hold a little bit longer, and the Kroxigors come in with the armor piercing, the bonus versus infantry, but if you want to go a little bit wider, get more heavy kind of armor amongst the dinosaurs, the skinks are definitely the way to go in that respect. So definitely pretty solid. And if you're not if someone came in and wasn't prepared for a bunch of heavy armor, just look at this. 3 Kroxigors with 100 armor. Over here on the far side, he does also have horn ones. So 3 of those bad boys with 100 armor each. I mean, that is a lot of armor piercing you're going to need to deal with a list like this. But anyways, yeah, Kroxigor is going to be very good against dwarves. They'll crush the infantry. I mean, the dwarf warriors will get pounded, so will be the miners. Longbeards, of course, will struggle a little bit against those bad boys as well. But at least miners do have, or Longbeards and the dwarf warriors do have great weapons. But still, it's going to be tough. But nonetheless, we do have the guns, so hopefully they'll be able to, get through those. But really, the name of the game for this matchup is, can Falcon be effective enough with his horn ones? Can these guys get in the back line, just get on the Thunders, avoid the Slayers, and just use their heavy melee attack and their heavy armor piercing to really pay their dues? Because these guys are expensive. They're a big investment. And it looks like they're going to be led by a Feral Carnosaur. So remember, guys, for anyone just maybe who skipped the introduction, this is a tabletop tournament. So we didn't know what our opponents were going to play. You just have to bring a well-rounded army that's relatively capable of dealing with any threat. So it's definitely nice. I mean, he has a lot of armor piercing here, and just in case his opponent does go big monster mash, he has a Feral Carnosaur, and the horn ones aren't going to be slouches in that respect either. On top of that, he does have the Light Wizard, which is one of Falcon's favorite things to use. It's very powerful as like a lawnmower type effect. If, for example, he gets the horn ones, casts Ebrona's Time Warp, they're going to get a huge speed increase, which is helpful against my Dawi for getting around them. And on top of that, it does have melee attack, so that's going to make these guys into just straight up murder machines. So I'm really looking forward to showing you guys how that went. So let's get this battle on the road here, and right now I'm going to be reorganizing my forces. I saw he had a massive force coming this way with the horn ones, and saw that they were going to be pressuring me a little bit, so I kind of reorganized. Thunders, in the meantime, going to be taking some free pot shots into the skink cohorts, and they will be switching immediately onto the Kroxigors. I don't want to be wasting any ammunition on the skinks, because this can become a pretty long battle. We both have relatively high leadership factions. So I do have my miners in reserve here as well. Thunders in the back line, Slayers here, as well as the Longbeards with great opens. But a massive force is coming in here. So the Thunder is getting some nice Overwatch fire into these horn ones as they do charge in here. And it's going to be a pretty brutal impact. But, realizing that most of his pressure is coming from over here, I wasn't super concerned. I was like, okay, I can rotate my Longbeards and the Slayers. And you can see here the Giant Slayers get on there. Master Rune of Wrath and Rune coming down, which does some decent damage. But a couple of the horn ones will definitely be cut down by these Giant Slayers. And I'm just trying to get back with the Thunders. I took quite a bit of damage, but it looks like the Giant T-Rex is going to be coming in there as well. Now in the main fight, you can see some of the skink cohorts in the front have engaged with the miners, and some of my chaff units, my dwarf warriors are going to be engaging as well. Kroxigor's also piling in. They're going to be getting those spanking paddles on the miners, but it looks like they're trying to force cat through and maybe get back here. The Feral Carnosaur has pushed into my secondary defense line. The Thunders are ready. I mean, I have 4 of those bad boys. One of them's a little bit out of position, but I'm going to be pulling him here. We're getting some beautiful fire into that Feral Carnosaur. Currently, he's being attacked by these Dragonback Slayers. We're going to be doing some great work. And the Carnosaur does have 95 armor, though, so yeah, the Giant Slayers would be a little bit better, but we are able to rampage him with the gunfire. The Dragonback Slayers have jumped on him, and there's also going to be some support from the Runesmith, who is no slouch in combat either. Even the Dwarven, I guess, quote-unquote casters are not bad. In the meantime, the cannon is shooting downtown at the Horn Ones, and it's going pretty well over here. The Horn Ones, for the most part, have been rampaging, but the Cold Blood has freed up some of them. Kroxigor's doing a good job as well, but like I said, even, the Dwarf infantry here, they're fighting against some serious counters, right? Like Horn Ones and Kroxigors, just these armor-piercing beasts, they're holding proud, and even if they're not going to do any damage, they're going to hold things in place and allow my guns to really do the heavy lifting. Now, a massive banishment going down, beautiful play there by Falcon, able to get some huge value on my Dragonback Slayers that actually killed about 15 models or so and did some really substantial damage. But if you look at the battlefield overall, we formed a bit of a pocket, which is great. This is what you want with the Dwarves. Force your opponents into a kill box, get those Thunders going, just let the Dawi Thunder sing, and you can see here in the back, the cannon is also doing great work against the Horn Ones. My Rune Lord's a little bit out of position. He's on the far side of the battlefield. Some of these horny boys are going to be jumping on him, but another group of Thunders is holding, being supported by the last of the Giant Slayers. There's only 10 of these guys left. And they're trying their little hearts out here to hold, but I'm going to be pulling back the Dragonback Slayers to try and reorganize a little bit. But nonetheless, it's a pretty close fight. Balance of power is even. The Dinosaur did come back from route, so the Feral Carnosaur, I thought I had broken it off the battlefield, just was not paying attention. This bad boy is going to come in here with his tail and do some substantial damage to my cannon and probably temporarily shut it down. So what I do in response is I get my 7 Giant Slayers. So there's only 7 of these guys left. They're going to be coming in a massive Last Samurai moment here on the Feral Carnosaur. He's going to be taking massive Thunder fire, which is great. I mean, these guys hit like trucks. And Bugman's Ranger is, of course, quite good, but really Thunder is just like the amount of punch they have in the direct fire can be so devastating. So the Feral Carnosaur in the meantime is going to be running. You can see this T-Rex is going to be taken down by the Dawi Thunder, and a couple of these Giant Slayers are able to help finish the task. Unfortunately, I think he fell on one of my cannons here, which is going to be tough. And Falcon pushing through with the Horned Ones, and yeah, it's getting a little bit messy in here for sure. But you can see the bounce of power after we took out that big dinosaur, and we were able to corral his forces. We were able to form a shooting box around here, and then all of the Croxagors and other Horned Ones kind of ended up fighting in a bit of a blob versus Dwarf Warriors and Runesmith, and of course Longgirds of Great Weapons, who are no slouches against Croxagors. Another Rune of Wrath and Ruin going down in the Skink cohorts. I could have used it to slow, but the Rune of Wrath and Ruin does damage based on a model count. It's not going to be like a flat damage on a single target, for example, so you always want to use it on units if you're looking for damage on things like that, a high model count, essentially. Thunder's in the back getting some beautiful crossfire here on the Horned Ones. Cannon is still online, being defended by 7 Giant Slayers. These guys definitely paying their dues. I mean, look at those guys. They single-handedly held up these Croxagors, caused them to rampage, and now it's buying time for my Thunders here to fall back, who are going to be able to turn and shoot and hopefully be pretty effective. In the front line, you can see that the last of the dinosaurs, the Croxagors, actually being overwhelmed by a combination of Dragonback Slayers, Longgirds with Great Weapons, who do have that solid armor piercing, and of course a Runesmith, who's going to be there providing his heroic presence. The job of the Hut Slan, the Slan Mage Priest, the Banana Slan, is looked like it's going to be the choice here. It's going to be kind of moving into the main formation, trying to unify with some of his Horned Ones, but I'm going to be falling back with the Thunders and my other troops, and for the most part, the backline pressure from my opponent, the Croxagors, and I think a couple of Horned Ones, have been pretty much taken offline by the Crossfire, and pretty much anytime you're playing Dwarves, always make sure to kind of have good separation between your guns because you don't want them to all be compromised at once. That's why you saw in the beginning my formation was very, very wide. Now right here, another banishment coming in from the dinosaur. Beautiful play by Falcon here. Very, very good positioning. This is able to tear up a ton of my Dwarves. So unfortunately, I'm going to be taking some massive casualties as these Dwarves are torn limb by limb by this banishment right here, doing some substantial damage, but at this point, there's a couple Horned Ones kind of riding about, but I think I'm going to be stabilized. I'm just using these Giant Slayers to chase off the Croxagors, and there are a couple Croxagors coming back in here. A somewhat quote-unquote healthy group, I guess. It only has 8 models left, but the Thunders should be able to kind of finish them in Overwatch, and it looks like a lot of the Skinks are going to be routing off as well, but it looks like the Slan is going to be kind of reunifying some of his forces out here. Some of these Skink cohorts are going to be chasing down Thunders, but I also had some troops that I forgot about, so I forgot about these Miners for, I think, the entire battle, but the Dwarf Warriors here, thankfully, are still, they're still in pretty good shape. Horned Ones in the back are going to be pressuring, just kind of looking for scraps wherever they can. They do have the Baroness Time Warp, which is going to make them track stars, putting them up to 97 speed, which is pretty terrifying, right? Having like a massive armor-piercing beast with that kind of speed. But yeah, there's not much resistance left from the dinos. This main center pocket of the Dwarves is just furious. They're just going to be colliding into these Skinks, doing huge damage, especially considering both of my lords, or I should say my lord and my hero, are in great shape. I think it's going to be really tough. This Dwarf coming in with a massive karate kick, just kicking one of those dinos in the face, or lizards, or whatever you want to call them. Thunder is here. Looks like they've stabilized. They're going to be shooting at the Croxagors here, and these Croxagors taking just some huge Overwatch fire. And somehow, some way, this cannon is still online. So the cannon's going to be shooting downtown. I was trying to hit that Banana Slan and finish him off. But basically, I'm just going to be sending Dragonback Slayers and the remnants of my army to go polish these guys off. And that cannon does bounce off his fat gelatinous body, but it looks like he's still somewhat stable. But I think the dinos are going to get hit with army losses. And that's going to be game 1 in this tabletop tournament. So my Dawi were able to take the victory over the dinos. We're going to be moving on to game 2. So just a bit of a summary of the game. I think that my build was pretty well equipped. The Dwarf Warriors in the front line were able to do So my Dwarf Warriors in the front line were able to do a pretty good job and just kind of hold things in place, use their high defensive stats, for the cost, right? You're paying like 450 or something for the standard Dwarf Warriors. And I mean, they can hold Skinks back all day. And even standard Dwarf Warriors with their armor and their good leadership and high melee defense can actually fend off Saurus for quite some time. So I felt like the Dwarf Warriors did a pretty good job there, but really the name of the game was the Thunders and the Cannon, as well as the Giant Slayers and the Dragonback Slayers. They were able to really secure that back line, and from there I was able to get that just overlapping gunfire from the Thunders and the Cannon to really finish off the heavy armor of the dinosaurs. But yeah, that build was pretty nasty. I mean, a couple weeks back I played in the tournament. The last time I played in it was with the Bretonians, and yeah, like I found that you know, I think I actually lost to a build very similar to this. It might have even been Falcon against his Lizardman, and he just had so much armor, and there was like Stegodons and Croxagors. If you don't come prepared, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Dinos seem pretty good in this format, is that like you need to come prepared for that heavy armor, because if you don't, like you're just going to be kind of poking them with like low AP spears, and you're going to have a lot of trouble. So as such, I definitely think that the Jawi Thunder line here was pretty good. So we're going to be moving on to game 2, which was a very fun showdown between myself and the glorious Professor Pone, who is going to be playing the Empire in this tabletop tournament. But again, very well played to Falcon. He's been the champ of many of these tabletop tournaments. And yeah, I look forward to facing off against you again. So guys, we will see you in game 2. All right, guys, and now we're here in the semifinals of this tabletop tournament featuring a showdown between my Dwarves and the Empire of Professor Pone. So definitely going to be a pretty fun game here, as we do have the glorious Karl Franz, a Witch Hunter, as well as a bunch of different regiments of renown. Hammer of the Witches, Silver Bullets, and some fancy Demogryph Knights. So for the forces of the Empire, it looks like in the forest they do have the Royal Altdorf Gryphites, which are a great pick as far as the metagame of this tournament goes, right? You've seen Croxagors, you've seen Dinosaurs. These guys are definitely a staple, I would say, as far as the tabletop tournament for the Empire. But against a Dawi, they're not going to be quite as useful, but at the very least, they have good armor piercing, they have good mass, and they do also cause terror. So if they are able to get into the back line or maybe push through some Dwarf Warriors, they can potentially get a decent little terror route going. On top of that, he does have Karl Franz up in the skies, and Karl, you always got to respect the Franz. The Franzy man can do some heavy lifting. He has good armor piercing. He can easily just beat the brakes off a Rune Lord and a Runesmith. He's going to be pretty vulnerable to focus fire with my force. Of course, I have a cannon and 4 thunders, so he needs to be very careful with where he treads. But if he can find like an angle of pursuit, maybe come through the forest or the trees and dip in and out of combat, Karl Franz can definitely do some heavy work here. He does also have the Reikland Runefang and Golem Ross. For the front line of the Empire, it looks like it's going to be mostly state troops, so just spearmen, as well as the Sigmar Sons on the far side. So the spearmen with shields are one of the more conservative picks in general. You bring them for their high melee defense, and much like you bring Dwarf Warriors, they're going to hold the front line and really allow your guns and your other infantry, like Greatswords, for example, to do most of the heavy lifting. So I like these guys quite a bit. We got a Witch Hunter here. He also has good armor piercing, and honestly, when I played ladder against the Dwarves as the Empire, I actually really like to bring the Witch Hunters because they have great armor piercing. Accusation is actually pretty effective at taking out Dwarf Lords, despite the 25% resist. Yeah, the Witch Hunter's not a bad choice here. He's got handgunners, 2 greatswords in the back, which are definitely going to be one of his saving graces. These guys are quite good against dwarves. I mean, any great weapon infantry is going to be good against dwarves simply because they have so much armor. Nonetheless, I'm going to be trying to focus these guys down, and hopefully it'll work out. So he does have 2 greatswords here. On the far side, he has Silver Bullets, which are going to be useful despite the 25% mitigation. The 25 missile damage still isn't bad at all, and they do have stock, so I'm not going to see them until he wants me to. He's got a Jade Wizard in the forest, which if you're going to be going with the good old Franzy man, you pretty much have to bring a Jade Wizard, I think, because, I mean, unless you just really want to go all in on an Alpha Strike, you could use like Lore of Light to kind of net someone in place, but with Franz, I still think that a Jade Wizard is the safest bet. Hammer of the Witches, and that's going to be pretty much it, guys. So let's get this show on the road. Over here in the forest, I do have a Vanguard of Miners, so I was like, you know what, I bet you the Empire's going to have a cannon, so I thought I was going to be super sneaky, so I did Vanguard these Miners here, and I'm going to wait till he commits. I did see the Royal Altdorf Gryphites for a split moment because he did move them out of the trees, so I was like, okay, I'm going to wait for those guys to go and for the battle to get underway, and from there I'm going to, send my Miners on that long trek, just the straight up the Hobbits going to Isengard here. We're going to be trying to get over there and get to those Misty Mountains, which are metaphorically, well, I guess the cannon. You guys get what I'm saying. So the rest of my force is going to be advancing here. I'm taking some cannon fire from the Hammer of the Witches. It looks like it's going after either my Great Weapons or Giant Slayers, or no, he's going after my Thunders, which is a very good choice. I have a very, very heavy amount of firepower here, and if he's able to kind of mitigate some of the damage coming in from the Thunders, it'll definitely help out the Franz man. I do get a very nice cannon shot through the tree. So unfortunately, the Altdorf outskirts do have some line of sight issues. There's some trees and there's some little slopes right here, but I'm able to get some really juicy cannon shots, or at least one shot into the Royal Altdorf Gryphites. And of course, you can still heal them, but they lost all their models. So you can see here that despite the Earthblood, they're at their model. Each model has its maximum amount of HP, so it's not going to be healing from that Earthblood, so I was kind of happy to have drawn out that Earthblood right there. So the rest of my forces are going to be advancing here. You can see I do have a nice little lip here, so if I'm able to get over this hill and get my Thunders on these like little mounds right here, I think I'm going to have some pretty juicy line of sight. In the meantime, my proud Miners are on their quest across the Forgotten Lands over here, so they're going to be kind of working into the back line, and hopefully we'll able to eventually pull off the sneaky Dwarven ambush, or the Dwarven flanking maneuver, which nobody ever expects. So my Thunders have taken quite a bit of damage from that cannon, but I do have line of sight on the cannon now for the most part. You can see it looks like a cannonball did bounce off this hill right here. So he's not able to see me. 41 of 60 models, definitely not fun, but that's why I have 4 of them, so it's going to be good. So as the main fighting gets underway, it looks like his Silver Bullets are going to be opening up on the Dwarf Warriors, which I'm fine with. Those guys have shields, they're durable, and they're also very cheap, so it's not really going to be like terribly devastating. The Greatswords are going to be advancing. That's definitely one of my biggest issues here. So as such, I'm going to be getting 2 groups of Thunders, 2 on to one of his greatswords. So for each of the two Thunders, going to be focusing these guys down, getting some massive fire coming in. We don't take out too many models. It looks like some of the fire did get caught up on the Sigmar Suns, but I'm going to be dropping a Rune of Wrath and Ruin and a Master one. So one on each of these guys, just trying to butter their bread. Now on the front line, the Dwarf Warriors will hold pretty well against Sigmar Suns. I'm pretty sure Sigmar Suns would win in a prolonged fight, but the armor's really going to hold up here, and I really just need to kind of target those greatswords as long as I possibly can. The Royal Outdwarf Gryphites have now sprung their trap. Those guys are going to be coming up and around, but I do have some Longbeards over here as well as Giant Slayers, and you can see I'm going to be reorganizing my force to kind of intercept those guys. And the Mission Impossible miners are going to be coming out of the forest trying to get onto the guns, but yeah, just gunfire going back and forth, but his two handguns not putting the most pressure onto my Thunders because they do, of course, have shields. And Karl Franz with a very bold strategy. He flies up into open field, and a single volley from, like, I think 3 groups of my Thunders was able to just do so much damage. But he's going to be coming in, going after the Rune Lord. So the Rune Lord's going to be trying to do a little bit of a juke. And I do pull back, which I was happy about. I'm like, pull him into the gunfire, pull him in. And you can see the Dwarf Thunders just unleashing hell into Karl Franz. And the Dragonback Slayers are going to be rushing in. And I didn't even take any damage because I actually got knocked over. So I was so happy I was able to get out of that unscathed. In the forest, the Royal Outdwarf Gryphites did try and come in, but they were actually ambushed. I had some Giant Slayers kind of lurking in the trees over here, so I was able to get that nice jump on those guys and really take them out. And the cannon, a little bit of collateral fire, but it's definitely worth it against the Royal Outdwarf Gryphites. And the miners are almost here, guys. The moment of reckoning is upon us, and the Dwarf Warriors, of course, winning against the Spearmen. That's pretty much to be expected. Doing a great job, but wherever the greatswords are, they're kind of having some problems. But Karl Franz got some huge heals. That Rigo, you can see, topped him off, but he's pretty much at his healing cap. In the front line, the Longbeards with great weapons were pulled in from reserve to intercept the greatswords, and they've done a pretty damn good job doing that. And I actually got some of my Dragonback Slayers up and around and did a bit of a Dawi flanking tactic. And these guys do have 40 speed, so they're actually faster than greatswords and state troops. So he does break through in a couple areas here. You can see these Spearmen did get through, but for the most part, I'm going to use Rune of Wrath and Ruin. I'm going to be sending in Giant Slayers, and I do have some Overwatch fire coming in from the Thunders as well. So quite happy about that situation. They're going to be broken in a matter of seconds here. In this frontline fight, the Dwarf Warriors and the Longbeards with great weapons are holding back the tide of the Empire. The Witch Hunter here, of course, getting his no-scopes. I don't know what he's actually shooting. I'm pretty sure he accused the Runesmith of heresy. Right now, pretty much anytime you see anything like valuable in open field like this, all of my Thunders are going to be switching and lining up their sights onto this Witch Hunter, and they're going to be putting him down incredibly hard. The other Dawi over here are going to be shooting at the advancing greatswords, and I could have engaged them right there, but I was like, why do I take this engagement? They're slow, they're beat up, they're tired. Let's pull back, let's kite back with the Runesmiths, and the Giant Slayers use the Rune of Wrath and Ruin just to maximize the amount of damage they're taking. And you can see these guys are just being straight up, just a Napoleon right here, just being pulled back and shot to pieces. These guys are definitely not having a good time. So I basically send in the Runesmith. I'm like, okay, I'm going to send this guy in, use him as kind of a tar pit, and just pick off the rest of the greatswords. The Runesmith is going to be going in, dropping some Dawi Karate. And on top of this Witch Hunter here, who's at -2 leadership, so he's going to be tanking off. And the back line is a little bit disastrous for the Empire, as the Dragonback Slayers and the Miners, my secret agent Miners, finally made it, and they actually shut down the Hammer of the Witches, so they got in there with their picks, and they just beat the brakes off this crew, which was pretty awesome. There still is one handgun group firing that has done some really good job, really good damage to my Thunders here, so Professor Pone's been pretty on point with that. But for the most part, my firing line is just very, very healthy. And in reality, I think my army composition, which is very well built to defeat the Empire. On top of that, the Empire already has a huge disadvantage against the Dwarves. I think it's a matchup that very heavily favors the Dwarves in general. I mean, the Empire can do it, but they really need to fine-tune it and kind of contour their army to defeat the Dwarves. Whereas my list, honestly, I feel like I could go onto ladder against, even a pre-built Empire list and do pretty well with my list. So I had a pretty big advantage in terms of army composition. So the Dwarf Warriors and the Longbeards here in the front line doing a pretty good job spanking those greatswords and those Spearmen. The Jade Wizard in the forest, it looks like he's going to be fighting the remnants of some Miners or some Longbeards or something. But for the most part, the Witch Hunter's offline. He's being chased off. Karl Franz up in the skies, coming in for the last Samurai. So Karl Franz going out like a true patriot of his people. He's just going to be taking gunshots, and Karl Franz is going to be falling to the Dawi gunfire. And not the most glorious, fall there, but at least he did go down in front of the sights of his city here. So that's going to be pretty cool. The Jade Wizard taking some heavy fire from the Thunders as he does go in for the last Samurai. So Pone definitely won to make the game entertaining, as it does end here with the Karl Franz charge and some of those other troops. But at this point, all that's really left is going to be Sigmar Suns. So that's going to be all she wrote for the forces of the Empire. So well played to my opponent, Professor Pone. And like I said, I just think that my list was very well equipped. I mean, I had the runes to kill the greatswords. I had plenty of armor piercing to kill both the greatswords and the Demogryph Knights. And I had the numbers just to kind of hold up his advance. And I really think that my army composition was just the name of the game here. So so the Dwarf list is proving to be pretty strong so far. It seems to have pretty good answers to most of the common kind of threats that we've seen in the metagame of this tournament, including just all the heavy cav and the monsters, heavy infantry. And yeah, it's done pretty well. So I wonder if we're going to see an evolution of that in the coming weeks and maybe see some swarming bestial factions like the Beastmen and stuff. But so guys, we're going to be going on to the grand finals of this tournament. So the Dawi are doing pretty solid here, and we're going to be facing off against the classic grudge match. We're going to be facing off against the Greenskins, who are going to be led by Brigson. Definitely a very solid tournament player. So guys, hopefully you are ready for the grand finals, and we'll see you there. All right, guys, and now we're here in the grand finals of the Lore Master of Sotek's tabletop tournament, featuring a showdown between my Dawi and the Greenskins of Rigson. So definitely one of the more cinematic and kind of thematic ways to end this tournament, with a showdown, or a grudge match, I should say, between the Dwarves and the Greenskins. So for the armies of Rigson, it looks like he does have a very heavy armor-piercing core. So I was a little bit nervous about all these black orcs. So in total, he does have 4 black orcs, which, or as you guys know, one of the main staples of the Greenskin versus Dwarf matchup in Standard Ladder. So these guys are going to be doing some, pretty good work, but I'm going to need to be very efficient with my Runes of Wrath and Ruin and my Thunder Fire to potentially take these guys out. But yeah, the Black Orcs are really going to be the main threat from his list. So in total, he does have 4 of those bad boys, a couple Gobos. So he has some Gobos here. It looks like he does have some Night Goblins there, as well as some nasty Skulkers on the far side. So he's probably going to be trying to sneak those guys up and around, get into my guns, and yeah, just, cause general commotion and mayhem amongst the Dwarven gun line. So yeah, one group of nasty Skulkers. I think the other one is the Regiment of Renown of Goblins. So it looks like it's the 8-peak loonies, the unbreakable ones, who are, of course, poisoning. So that's going to be quite useful. And up in the skies, he does have Azag. Azag is, pretty universally pretty solid. He does, of course, have the Wa, as all Greenskin Lords do. But more importantly, he has Spirit Leech. And Spirit Leech plus his 480 weapon strength, his poison, and his high melee attack make him a pretty insane assassin against Dwarf Lords. So if he's able to get in there, get on the Rune Lord, the Runesmith, and sit in there without taking fire from my Thunders or being attacked by the Slayers, he could be, a pretty big game changer for sure. And Spirit Leech, that's his only ability. So he's just going to be using that juicy Spirit Leech all day on my Lords, I would imagine. So 4 Black Orcs, and it looks like he does have a Goblin Rock Clobber. So this is actually kind of annoying, because he does have good line of sight here. Or I should say, he does have the Catapult or Trebuchet line of sight, and that he can shoot over the trees, and my cannon can't really return fire without going through the trees. So the Rock Clobber with its little dinky armor piercing going to be a little bit of a nuisance to my force, and he does have 2 groups of Savage Orc Airboys, which are quite good as well. They can fight melee if they have to, and on top of that, they do have better armor piercing than Goblins. So you can go with the Rescuers, but I've seen a lot of high-level players actually opt for Savage Orc Airboys instead, because they have more consistent armor piercing, and if the Rescuers get taken out, your Goblin Archers are going to do next to nothing. So it's kind of cool to see these guys in action. So in total, he has 2 of those, 4 Black Orcs, and the Arachnarok Queen. So this thing is pretty strong. Against my build, it's going to be a little bit scary, and in general, against Dwarves, it's a little risky, of course, because, the guns and the cannons can really focus it down. But of course, this is the tabletop tournament, so you can't really dictate the terms of the matchup and choose your faction based on what your opponent's playing. So it's going to be pretty wild. I mean, if it can get into the back line, use its Spiderling summons on top of my guns and Slayers, and then just tear out my front line, open it up for the Black Orcs. That could be devastating, but man, it is going to be taking a ton of fire on the approach. So guys, let's get this grudge match on the way and see if the Dawi are going to prevail, or if the foul Greenskin Wa is going to take the day. So right now, Rigson is going to be grabbing his Night Goblins, and it looks like he's going to be creeping up and around, I would imagine, trying to get them to fight Miners. Obviously, they will be able to beat Miners, as Miners have 18 and 18 for their respective combat stats. Azag up in the skies is just kind of cackling and surveying the scene. My apologies for the creaking floor there. I'm actually, I was having a little bit of trouble with the noise gate on my microphone, so I'm adjusting it right now. So a little bit of an in-between time. Anyways, Black Orcs and the Savage Orc Airboys are going to be pushing, but they're probably going to hide in the trees initially. My cannon was shooting at Azag, but he was able to kind of avoid me. Of course, Rigson, a very seasoned player here, he's able to side strafe, and if you run side to side and kind of curve back and forth, it's not, I mean, you're not going to dodge every shot, but it's certainly going to help you with quite a few of them. So I realized it wasn't really going well shooting at Azag, so I'm going to be switching the cannon onto the Goblin Rock Clobber in the back, hoping to take out a couple of the models, but I think at the end I just realized it's not really worth it. So Rigson clearly is going to be waiting for his Goblins to get in position. These ones are here, and the nasty Skulkers have gotten up and around the flanks, but I was kind of expecting that. So I did have my Miners and other troops kind of in a bit of a screening formation, so if they have to, they should be able to fight Goblins for quite some time. Now, nasty Skulkers will kill Miners very quick, but I do have a Rune Lord and a Runesmith, or a Runesmith nearby, who hopefully can use the Rune of Wrath and Ruin to help out. In the meantime, I do move my Rune Lord forward, and it looks like Rigson was using his Goblin Rock Clobber to shoot at the Rune Lord, which, hey, it has decent armor piercing. Why not take some free shots if it's one of the only things in range here? So here comes the Rock Clobbers. Not the most accurate of artillery crews, but you know what? They're doing their job. He was initially shooting at the Longbeards, but I did pull those guys back out of range. But now that I saw some of his troops coming forward, I was like, it's time to satisfy the grudge. We're going in with a full grudgeoning, and we're going to be trying our best. So the Savage Orc Airboys do move up. It looks like he's going to be trying to get some free shots. These guys do have 140 range against my 145 on the Thunders. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this. So we get some massive focus fire coming in from the Thunders. Pretty good line of sight here on this map. And I'm also going to be using a Rune of Wrath and Ruin just to punish these guys. So I'm like, it's going to get around their physical resist. I need to force them off. Let's take whatever free value we can before the fighting starts, because I really need to do damage before those Black Orcs get in. So we're able to do some good work against the Savage Orc Airboys. We put those guys down pretty hard with the Dawi Thunder. And over here, the Skulkers are going to be coming in, and instead of intercepting them, now you don't always have to, if you have a little space, and that's why spatial awareness with the Dwarfs is so important. Just look at the space between all my units. It's very solid because now I don't have to force the engagement. I can pull back, get some very saturated gunfire here with the Thunders, and I'm also going to be using a Rune to punish these guys a little bit. So these Gobos definitely not going to like take these shots. Their leadership is tanking, the Miners are going to be falling back, and I do drop a Rune of Wrath and Ruin, or the Master I should say, on these Goblins, which is going to do a ton of damage and probably break their leadership pretty quick. Now that, you know, they've gotten a little bit closer and they're slowed by the Rune, I'm able to get some really good focus fire with the guns, and I'm going to send one Miner up and around the back and slam in with the other one in the front. So just basically sandwiching these nasty Skulkers and instantly breaking their leadership. You can see right now they're actually broken already. So on the far side, same thing happening. The Night Goblins do come in. They're going to be getting sandwiched by the Miners and the Dwarf Warriors here, so we're able to polish off the harassment. So now that I've kind of dealt with the pressure on the flanks, I'm like, now I can really focus on the initial onslaught that's going to be coming in. So the Thunders vastly out-trading the Savage Orc Airboys, of course, but I did take some damage back. He was able to punish one of my Thunders with some focus fire, and it looks like some of the Gobos are trying to squeak through the front line as well and get onto my guns, but they are being intercepted, but they're still pretty fast. Thunders are going to be shooting downtown at the Black Orcs. Really got to start working on those guys. They're going to be the bane of the Dwarves in general. Ragnarok Queen, though, coming into the kill box a little bit, which I was quite happy about. So I'm getting some good damage on the Queen. He did summon some Spider Hatchlings, which are going to be pushing in, probably trying to weave through maybe this little seam right here and get onto the guns. I mean, that's really going to be the name of the game of the Greenskins. Can they shut down the guns, or can their Black Orcs kill my infantry fast enough and then get onto the guns? But that Goblin Rocklobber, man, for Rigson has been doing a ton of work. My Thunder has taken a lot of damage. I'm going to be turning here and getting some shots on Azag. Definitely nothing is free, so I got to work on that guy. But it looks like he does drop the Spirit Leech here onto the cannon. So he's going to be trying to focus down the cannon, probably to free up the Arachnarch Queen. In the meantime, the Thunderers are doing their job, just kind of shooting downtown at the Black Orcs. And the Black Orcs are pushing forward. But like I said, having this extra space and having my army so far apart, I don't have to take this engagement with the Black Orcs. Just kind of kite them back a little bit, get some gunfire, some crossfire, and from there we will then engage them when they're a little bit more buttered up. So unfortunately, these hatchlings are going to be moving through, and they're going to be jumping onto the Thunders. He does pop the Wah to make these hatchlings nice and juicy, and it looks like 42 melee attack, but the Dragonback Slayers are going to come in and probably be able to fend those guys off and peel them from the Thunders. These guys are still firing, though. These guys are in good shape, and this other group is going to be shooting at the Black Orcs. So these Black Orcs took a lot of damage. The ones in the center pretty much untouched, but we've done some pretty good skirmish damage to the heavy Greenskin infantry on the approach. Ragnarok Queen has taken a little bit of work, but unfortunately she's able to fight, not taking too much fire, and she is kind of buttering the bread of some of these Longbeards here. So that's a little bit scary, and of course the Wah making that impact very strong. In the center, we do have the Longbeards with great weapons, so the Dwarf Warriors had to kind of be used in other areas, so I pulled in the Longbeards to kind of fight these Black Orcs. And you can see it's getting a little bit ugly. The Longbeards are taking a lot of damage. The Runesmith is helping, but I made a huge mistake here. I actually let my Rune Lord get surrounded by Black Orcs, but hey, at least, I mean, he distracted them. I do also drop the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin on the Black Orcs to kind of tatter them up a little bit. My opponent does drop a very solid Spirit Leech on top of my Lord. So suddenly a battle I felt very comfortable in. I was like, uh-oh, my Rune Lord's low. Azag's kind of lurking in the shadows. And Rigson's been doing a very good job of kind of flying in the trees, coming in and out, and really kind of blocking my line of sight. But the Black Orcs taking a lot of damage from the Rune magic. In the center, my Longbeards are holding quite valiantly. And over here, I'm able to stabilize. I do have two groups of Thunders, which are in good shape. There is that perpetual Spiderling pressure, so Rigson's doing a very good job of utilizing his Ragnarok Queen here. But the Slayers are going to be pushing in, intercepting the Goblins, and now we're just getting a kill box. Just massive damage coming on the Ragnarok Queen. The cannon is shooting, the two Thunders got some really good volleys. We're able to pretty much finish her off, so she's going to be running, and the Bounce of Power for the first time does come into my favor. We're going to be engaging with the Dwarf Warriors, so having those onions, very important. Giant Slayers coming in, but the Crossfire is the name of the game. So everywhere I'm being pressured, I'm just kind of pulling back, pulling in my reserves to intercept the points of danger. These Goblins, of course, get to be broken very quickly, and the Thunders are shooting into the sides and the backs of these Black Orcs. But the Black Orcs are doing a good job. Longbeards have been broken, Dwarf Warriors taking a massive amount of damage, but we still do have the Giant Slayers who can do a number against Black Orcs, because of course they have much better armor piercing with their great weapons. We're kind of just shooting Azag, but yeah, the Spiders and the Spiderlings have been doing a good job, but the cannon is finally able to finish off the Arachnarch Queen, who's going to be sent running to the Shadow Realm, and yeah, looks like she's kind of hightailing out of here with her 1000 HP. So thankfully we'll be able to kind of not have to deal with some of those spider summons for quite some time. But the Thunder is just shooting in. The two groups here just wasting these Black Orcs, doing some really good HP damage. You can see they're getting chipped down just slowly and slowly. But the last kind of line of my traditional front line has been broken. We just have these Dwarf Warriors kind of holding valiantly, trying to hold things back here. But I do have some reserves still. So I have the Dwarf Warriors and the Giant Slayers who will be going into melee combat against these Black Orcs. And thankfully, like, the Black Orcs are very slow, and I have really nice space between the Black Orcs and the Thunderers here. So I'm able to shoot in and really punish these Black Orcs. You can see they're getting just drained of HP. Their models are going down. Longbeards are going to be rallying in the distance. Of course, Dwarf leadership is very good. And I'm also going to be using Dragonback Slayers in the back to just chase down archers and other units like that. Over here, I have some miners coming back, which are going to be very, very welcome to this engagement. And the Dwarf Warriors, unfortunately, are going to probably have to fight these Black Orcs. There's still 52 models there. But the Rune Lord is able to stabilize. He does have a fair amount of HP, about 500. Another Rune of Wrath and Ruin going down, which is just going to be the standard variant. And it looks like the Dawi infantry, I don't think the Giant Slayers are in here yet, but it looks like there are some Longbeards. We're actually able to break back the Black Orcs. The Overwatch fire coming in from these Thunders just non-stop. They're just steady. They're just firing. They're able to actually wither these Black Orcs, which then allows Dwarf Warriors to actually beat Black Orcs, which is very solid. And the Rune Lord, in the meantime, down to 140 HP from that last Spirit Leech coming in from Azag, but the bounce power just getting closer and closer to victory for the Dawi. And of course, I do have the Giant Slayers who are going to come in and definitely karate chop some of these Black Orcs. Giant Slayers, I actually like them against Greenskins as like kind of a one-of type thing, because if they have to fight Black Orcs, they can do a ton of damage with 50 melee attack against 26 melee defensive Black Orcs, and of course, very, very good armor piercing value. So we're able to get onto these Black Orcs. They're shaken. The Cannonball is going to be going downtown against Azag, doing some substantial damage as he does chew on some of those Thunders there. And the Black Orcs here are going to be getting taken out by the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. Thunders, in the meantime, finishing off some of the archers in the back, and that is getting pretty damn close to army losses. The Arachnoid Queen is going to break, and that's going to be it. So the Dawi are going to be the victors of this tabletop tournament, and I definitely feel like the width of the army, and also having all the Thunderers as well as the cannons and the really good anti-armor was one of the big defining factors of this tournament overall. A lot of the players obviously relying on things like Kroxigors and Horned Ones, and of course big dinosaurs. And in the Empire matchup, we had a Karl Franz character, we had Demogryph Knights, and here we had 4 Black Orcs, which were the biggest like stress, of course, was facing off against the Black Orcs. But of course, most Greenskins, if it was a traditional ladder or a tournament, they would obviously cut things like the Queen and the Rock Lobber and just go wide with a lot more flank pressure to shut down your guns, hence allowing the Black Orcs to do very well. But in an all-comers tournament, I feel like a Dawi list like this is going to be pretty strong, unless the metagame shifts. If the metagame shifts and people are just going super wide and swarming, for example, if the Dinos had brought a ton of Saurus and just kind of just swarmed me without any good targets, then my army would have gotten absolutely trounced. And that's what's pretty cool. The metagame develops, tactics shift, and I really think that this Dwarf army was ready to party. It was. I mean, of all the lists I faced, I think that the Greenskin one was probably one of the most threatening, just simply because it has 4 Black Orcs, which is just so competitive. It has Azag as well. But I think the Arachnoid Queen was the one big hindrance here. However, the Arachnoid Queen, if you guys go back and watch the tournament on the Lore Master of Sotek's channel, did incredibly well in the other matchups. It was an absolute beast. So it really just kind of comes down to what your opponent brings, which is something that's very fun about the tabletop tournament, having to be well-rounded, right? But I mean, even against a Swarm army, I think this Dwarf list could do pretty good just because it's so wide and can plug a lot of holes and a lot of the Thunders who generate value. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun. So very well played to all of my opponents today, Falcon, Professor Pone, and Rigson. And of course, a huge thanks to the Lore Master of Sotek for hosting this tournament. It's some of the most fun I've had. It's really fun. And it's going to be every Friday again at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. And of course, all the other conversions can be done from there. So big thanks to Sotek for hosting the tournament. He's an absolute boss. And make sure to go subscribe to his channel. And we will see you guys hopefully in the next tabletop tournament. If I have time this Friday, I'm going to try my best to play in it. All right, guys. So we'll see you next time. And thanks again for watching. Take care.